In today's episode, Soyuz gets back off the ground, BepiColombo heads towards Mercury, and Tesla makes some money. Let's do this. Welcome to the Our Ludicrous Future podcast, where we talk about the cool stuff that's coming our way today that's going to change our lives in the future. This is Joe Scott with the Answers with Joe YouTube channel. With me is Tim Dodder.
Hi, I'm Tim Dodd from the Everyday Astronaut YouTube channel and stuff. And also is Ben.
Hey, what's up, guys? This is Ben Sullins from the YouTube channel Teslanomics. How are we doing today, fellas?
Pretty great.
Before everybody comments, I do know that Tim Dodd's last name is Dodd and not Dodder. I was just playing. I can see the comments coming already. It's like, I don't even know his name.
And then people from Iceland are going to be offended because that is like how they name people there. So, you know, this is a thing.
Great. Way to go, Joe.
Wow, that is some random info you know there.
No, this is data guy. Sorry, aside, we'll just get Ben's rant out of the way right now. In Iceland, there's like only 200 names or something you're allowed to name somebody. And your last name is your father's or mother's, I forget which one, first name plus son or daughter. So if your dad was named Thor, which is a legit name in Iceland, you could be Thor's son. And if you were a girl, you would be Thor's daughter, Dottir. And so you can be siblings but have different last names.
Whoa.
I thought that Icelandic names were like 20 letters long with only 2 vowel sounds in it.
That's like, somebody leave us a comment and let us know.
Those are like proper nouns. When you go through Iceland's airport, it's just like a word this long and it means like, look. You're like,
right?
I can't.
That's like German. How like they smash all the words together. It's like a sentence almost in like one word. But
I feel like at least German, when they do that, it implies more than a word. I swear, in Iceland there'll be a word that's 32 characters long, and it just means me or something. You're just like, how did
exit?
What? Yeah, exit. Yeah, like literally, just I don't get it. Hey, before we get started, I wanted to tell you guys why we're recording a day late.
Why is that?
So I went scuba diving Wednesday night in a tank at Space Camp down in Alabama.
What?
Yeah, and I went really slow because I've never scuba dived before. And I was trying really hard to like pressurize, you're supposed to like pop your ears and do all this stuff. And I did it. I did okay, but it was still just like really like throbbing. And I was trying to like not totally push it, And so I got to the bottom of this like 24-foot tank, and I'm hanging out down there for about 10, 15 minutes. And I'm really uncomfortable. Like something just doesn't quite feel right. And I should listen to my body. And so I just slowly went up, did the normal thing. That night, when I got back to the hotel room, I lay down, my head is just still physically like throbbing.
Mm.
Wow.
And it just like, maybe it's because I'm still recovering from that cold you guys know about. Something, I don't know what it was. So literally when I would like try to roll over to one side, it would just throb. I didn't sleep at all. And I had to leave for the airport at 5 a.m. And I don't think I've like ever done that. Like normally I'm like, lay down, I'm asleep. I didn't sleep. And I just go to the airport and was like, I haven't slept yet. What's wrong with me? So I felt like cabbage on Thursday. So I made us move back a day, so I apologize.
There you go again, Tim.
Is that like the bends? Like a minor case of the bends or something?
I think the bends is more with your lungs and like blood pressure stuff with oxygen in your and like the air in your body. I think this was just straight up congestion issues. I don't think it was really related to the bends, but
according to SDI, the Scuba Diving International website, there's a sinus headache that happens from a sinus squeeze. So apparently what happens is if you don't equalize properly, you get these headaches.
Which I tried really hard. I'm like squeezing my nose, blowing out, trying to do all of it, doing all this stuff. I'm not meant to scuba dive, I guess. Everything's too tightly sealed up here, trying to protect my brain.
Just maybe not in Alabama.
Hey, I was at Space Camp. It was a clean place. It's not like I was just in some swamp. With amoebas.
Great. So far we've pissed off Iceland and Alabama.
And now Florida.
Great. We're on a roll. Let's
who else can we offend?
Joe, you got any stories for us?
Well, we're going to start with some space stuff because, after Soyuz, failed on the launch pad, what was it, a couple weeks ago? They're already back up. Tim, you wanted to talk about that?
Yeah, this is crazy, guys. So they already launched a Soyuz 2 weeks after one completely failed, which to me is a pretty good sign because, that's like saying that they clearly know the root cause. And from the sounds of it, it sounds like it's another classic case of potentially Russian manufacturing, human error, forcing something into place cause. So yeah, the Russia launched a Soyuz just a couple days ago. And the preliminary investigations, for those of you, maybe if you're happening to listen to this right now, so just about 2 weeks ago now, there was a Soyuz launch failure with crew on board. There's never been an in-flight failure that resulted in actually having to abort off the rocket. Until then, that was in flight. Those are the keywords because people are like, but they've aborted before. That's a pad abort. This was an in-flight abort. That is the first time that had ever happened. It's really scary. I mean, we're talking about human lives on top of this giant, missile going Mach 3, and all just crazy, crazy timing. It's really scary. And so when you have a company building rockets that are supposed to have humans on board, when they bend a bolt and a hinge and a flange and then smack it into place and then lubricate it, hoping it goes okay, that's not okay. And that sounds like that's the root cause of the failure from like 2 weeks ago. We still haven't heard the official investigation, but it looks like there's already people probably being like, oh yeah, well, I kind of bent that thing when I was putting the booster attachment on. And I just, sprayed it down with some WD-40 and hoped it went okay.
So fit and finish issues, in other words.
Yeah, it is. And Russia had something like this, about, when was that? Like 2006 or 8 or something no, not even then. I think it was like 2011, fairly recently. They had a Proton rocket. And all 3 sensors were literally banged in place with a hammer upside down. They only go one way. And literally someone had to like put them upside down. And since they didn't fit, they're just like, well, I'll just smack it with this hammer until it goes in. So they've had some really bad issues. And again, the Soyuz that's currently on the space station has a freaking drill hole in it. I don't know. I'm not ready to call this sabotage. I don't think it's anything conspiratorial, but I think it's just a top-down manufacturing management error of like, they just don't care.
Panel gaps.
Do you happen to know? Yeah. I'm curious about this. I might need to look into it, but like, has Roscosmos had funding issues? I mean, I know that like NASA's funding has gone down over the years, but are they suffering similar issues?
Yeah, yes and no. It fluctuates like crazy too. I don't really know the numbers right offhand. And as a matter of fact, I think they're about to get a big pay cut here. A lot of programs have been canceled that were ambitious. That always seems to be the case with Russia. But every 2 years they announce, hey, we're going to the moon, or hey, we're going to do this or that. And then it just doesn't happen. So I don't really have the exact. I would like to see a chart on that too, though. I would like to see a chart on government spending in space over time. I wish we knew a data guy that would be able to chart all that stuff out for us. And
those are hard to find.
Those are really hard to find. Yeah. Probably not going to happen this time. Anyway, let's go ahead.
It's unfortunate though. I mean, isn't there some data out there? Back to data about like for every dollar that was spent on the space program, something like $3 or $4 came back in terms of like just technology that came out of it.
That I've tried to find those exact numbers because that is something that like we get quoted all the time, like $7 to $10 in ROI, basically, in return on investment of space technology. Because people quote all these different spin-offs that come from space flight. And I've had a really hard time finding proper numbers that cite the sources that actually tell, I have yet to actually find anything that's really, really that I would put my name on, to be honest, because it fluctuates like crazy. But of course, when people... overall, space flight, when you send something to space, that money doesn't go to space. That money stays down here on Earth, and the companies and, all of that. So it's it obviously helps our, the economy when you're talking about investments in space. It's not like, people are like, why does NASA need all that money? It's like, NASA's not like a company. They're, oh, look at this. Ben showing us NASA's budget. Is this one that shows, that takes into account inflation or not?
This is
Well, this only
if you
goes
guys are
from
watching,
2014
if
to
you're listening on the
actually, this
podcast,
is
we're
really-
looking at a graph of NASA's projected budget from 2014 to 2023. The budget is projected to be around $19.6 billion in 2020. NASA is the U.S. agency responsible for aeronautics and aerospace research. So it doesn't say if this is inflation adjusted, but it's only back to 2014. And if you've been paying attention, we haven't really had any inflation since then. So yeah, it doesn't. I mean, it looks like it went down slightly, but I mean, it's pretty consistent. Is there something more that that
No, that seems to be
this
about
was
what I'm familiar with because I knew it went up it had 2 good years in a row, and I think that was 2016 and 2017.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm curious to see that. I didn't realize it at actually technically, because even if it only goes up by like 1%, typically that's considered not going up because, against inflation and stuff. So
the rate of growth is slowing, or
yeah.
yeah.
Yep. Let's talk about. I want to just talk about 2 more missions real quick, or 2 more little spaceflight things that are pretty exciting. And then we'll get on. We have a lot. I think we're going to be talking a lot about the old Tesla today. So, so here we go. Just the other night, Ariane Space, well, ESA, the European Space Agency, launched a probe to Mercury on an Ariane 5, and Ariane 5 is an awesome rocket. It's launched, I think, over like 101 times or something. It's failed like 6 times, I think, though, with one or 2 partial failures. The beginning of the Ariane 5 program was a little bit sketchy, especially the first launch ever of it. They literally just used the same guidance computer that they used on the old rocket, and like they're just like, oh yeah, and they basically put it in there. And so once this thing overwhelmed that computer because it was a totally different rocket, all of a sudden it just goes 90 degrees and like try to fly straight sideways, and of course it disintegrated. But the Ariane 5 now has become a very trusty, stable workhorse of a rocket. It has the biggest payload, that the fairing that can actually take things to space. The area is the biggest payload fairing currently flying. It is a heavy lift launch vehicle. It has huge solid rocket boosters, very similar to the space shuttles. And then a nice sustainer engine that launches the whole way through the first stage, and that has an upper stage as well. And they launched a probe to Mercury that's going to get there in 7 years. Which is weird, isn't it? Because if you think about it, Mercury is a lot closer to us than, say, like Jupiter.
Right.
Well, did it take 7 years to get to Pluto?
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
Are they on chill mode? Did they not?
This is a actually pretty big spacecraft heading towards Mercury. That's half of it. The other half is then, in order to actually like get something that big launching on this rocket, you basically have to just do all these planetary gravity assists. So it'll fly by Earth and Venus multiple times to lower and get itself into this point where then it will finally like do its own full-blown orbital insertion once it's like in the right parameters to get around Mercury. The people that figure out these charts and these orbits, I don't get it.
It's amazing.
It almost sounds like a trick shot, like in a billiards game, like a pool. Like the thing bounces around 12 times. You're like, how did they figure that out?
Yeah, it's like that. But then you even account into like, the walls are moving. Yeah, exactly.
All of the balls are moving all the time, and you have to figure out exactly
where they're going to be when you get there. And then the craziest thing is, say you have any design changes in so they know the amount of delta V. That's basically like saying how many times they can change direction. How many times can they, nudge it this way, for any amount of time. And if anything changes on the vehicle at all, it changes that number. So you basically start with a number, and they just have to meet that criteria. And they base all these calculations on what the spacecraft is technically capable of. And I just can't even imagine the people that do this. But I should mention. Okay, go ahead.
It's not landing on Mercury, right?
Nope. It's going into orbit around Mercury, pretty close to it. But it needs to be able to survive crazy thermal and radiation environments because it is very close to the sun.
Well, that's what I was thinking, because I do recall reading about, was it the Russians trying to land stuff on Venus and never successfully doing it, and it turns out just because of of all those kind of things, the radiation, the kind of visibility and all the stuff, it's like almost impossible.
The hardest part about landing on Venus is actually Venus's extreme atmosphere.
Right.
Being on Venus
is insane.
It's like almost being on the bottom of the ocean. It's that much pressure. Russia actually has landed there successfully, and as a matter of fact, one of their probes famously was supposed to measure the surface of Venus with a probe that feels for the density of the soil. And unfortunately, all it did was measure the density of the lens cap that fell off of a camera. Literally just probing the lens cap, which I just find absolutely hilarious. But back to this mission real quick. It's basically going to go and measure. They're going to be looking at a few things like how dense is Mercury, because we still don't really know. It's crazy. It's the densest planet that we know to date. Why is it that way? How is it that way? They're going to be really studying the inside of the core of Mercury, or at least trying to. So they're going to figure out, is it like tectonically active? Basically just really study it looking at radiation, magnetic fields, lasers, all these cool things. So actually here we go. 5 instruments. It has a magnetometer, an ion spectrometer, an electron energy analyzer, a plasma detector, and a camera. So it's going to be basically mapping out like the magnetic field. And figuring out how it interacts with the sun. And by doing so, we can kind of figure out like its composition, which is crazy.
Yeah. So a couple months ago when the Parker Solar Probe left, I was a bad boy. I didn't actually read the article. I just kind of like skimmed past a headline, and it was basically talking about how it's harder to fly toward the sun than away from it, just because of gravitational stuff. And I was wondering if that plays into BepiColombo being this whole loop-de-loop thing.
Definitely. Yep, absolutely. It's, because you have to realize that in order to get to the sun, so if you were to orbit the sun really close, the closer you get to the object you're orbiting, the faster your orbit actually is. Mm-hmm. So in order to get closer to the sun, you're slowing down so that your lower point can be faster. And it's just this weird, it's really hard to kind of like picture unless you played a ton of Kerbal Space Program.
I was just going to ask, where did you learn that?
But it's really, really hard to slow down enough to get yourself into those lower orbits. And that's why it takes so many gravitational assists.
Okay.
Yeah. And one more little space news before we get into Tesla year, the year of Tesla. This is exciting for me and hopefully for those of you that like spaceflight. We're looking at a picture of the upper stage of the Atlas V that will carry the very first Boeing CST-100 Starliner. So that's one of 2 crew capsules that will be launching next year. Both of them are going to do test flights without people on it. And then both of them will be doing crewed flights with crew on it next year still, hopefully. I mean, we're within... It's never really gotten within a year, because it's been delayed since 2015, 2016 are supposed to be the first flights. And it's always like about a year out. They're like, actually, we're going to have to slip it back until, they push it back 6 months, and it does that continually. We're finally within where they are still saying, June, July for the first test flights with people, or maybe like August, but it's within a year. And to me, this is a good sign. We're seeing the first upper stage. We're seeing the hardware that's going to be flying them arriving at the Cape. And to me, that's just a great sign. It's really exciting. But what's cool about this is the first time. So the Atlas V that's going to launch people on top has flown so many times. It's a very, very well flown rocket. It's been around for a while. I just talked about all this recently, and now I don't have all those numbers. I thought they'd come to my brain right now, just off the top of my head. But basically they've never actually flown an Atlas V with this upper stage. They've flown Atlases like Atlas III with a Centaur upper stage, dual Centaur RL-10 upper stage before, but this is different. They've never flown this on the Atlas V, although this stage has flown a bunch of times, just not on the Atlas V. So this is going to be a rare configuration. It'll be so Atlas V's use a naming scheme that goes like 551 or 441 or 44. Wait, 551. There we go. Yeah. And then, or like 401, like a 401. And what that is the size of the fairing. So the size of the payload fairing is the first number, then the number of strap-on solid rocket boosters, and then the number of upper stage engines. And all to date, it's always been number 1. It's never been a something 2 because it's never flown with 2 engines on the upper stage. And this is the first time ever that we'll have the letter designation at the beginning is going to be N, instead of a number because it's not flying with a fairing. So N22 rocket. So this would be a no fairing because there's just the capsule on top with no fairing. Then 2 solid rocket boosters and 2 upper stage engines. And
2 upper stage engines. That does sound. I mean, I'm all I know is the Falcon 9. So essentially, when it breaks off and that's that second stage going, instead of just seeing one big booster engine there, you see 2.
Yes, exactly.
Gotcha.
Here's a good picture of it here on Spaceflight Now that I have up on if you're watching YouTube. It shows the dual RL-10 upper stage engines. Yep. And
so cool.
This is really cool. It's a really confusing and a complicated reason why they're doing 2 as opposed to 1. It's not so much about like redundancy, if the thing would blow up, but it's really about the flight profile. An Atlas V has it's actually a pretty weak upper stage engine. A single RL-10 is fairly weak, but extremely efficient, like crazy efficient. Its efficiency blows the Falcon 9 out of the water as far as its total amount of potential of delta V is through the roof. But it's really weak. So the Atlas V basically has to throw it up really high and not very far sideways. It has to spend more energy getting it up high so it can spend more time speeding up enough, and then it just kind of does this like lobbed thing. So but the problem with that is if you sent humans on that trajectory and they needed to abort, they'd come back down so fast on a ballistic trajectory that it would actually crush them when they hit the atmosphere. So they need to fly this thing at a more basically sideways. They need to get more velocity out of the first stage going sideways, and then they need the second stage to be able to keep that pretty steep trajectory sideways, or horizontal, getting that horizontal velocity very quickly so they can remain in a safe abort envelope the whole time, or almost. There's literally only I think there's a small gap still where if they would happen to have to abort at that exact moment, they probably would not survive reentry. But it's like they almost close the gap the entire way, all the way into orbit where they can safely abort because of this. It's really weird. The people that figure this stuff out, man. Hats off to you. So cheers and congrats ULA on getting hardware out there to the Cape. Can't wait to see it fly.
Who gets these spy shots, by the way? They look like someone was just standing in a field there.
Dude, people track this stuff, man. I still almost want to live in Florida just so I can be the guy laying in a field for 2 hours.
You got moss on your back and you spring up.
The National Geographic style. You would do that though.
Of course. It'd be super fun. That does it for rocket stuff.
Before we move on, there's a random point you made earlier that I would like to go back to. It's been rattling around in my head this whole time. I haven't listened to anything you said. No, so you said something earlier about how when we spend money on rockets, on certain payloads or whatever, satellites, telescopes, whatever, you always hear these people, and this is for anybody that's listening, just have this with you in case you hear anybody say this. Whenever people are like, oh, they spent $1 billion on that thing, it's such wasted money, they're just sending it out into space. It's not like they take a big Walter White pile of money and stick it on the top of a rocket and shoot it into space. That actually does go to thousands of people and their families and their jobs and different companies and contractors and stuff. This actually goes into the economy and does a lot of good. It always drives me nuts when I hear people say that, because it's like, what do you think they're doing? Do you think they're just throwing money up into space?
These things are made out of steel and aluminum, right? Yeah. You got to weld that stuff together. You got to process that. You got to mine it. There's a lot of.
Then once it's in space, there's people that are working still with the spacecraft daily, 24 hours a day, and then pulling data from the spacecraft and sending that out to research institutions to learn more about
it just keeps going.
Our lives here on Earth. It just keeps it. And here's what. Okay, I think this is on that rant. I just had to. This is one of those things. I had to say this. If you were to ask someone, solve world hunger, you can't. What do? You can't just solve world. When you start with a question like that, you can't come up with an answer. Yeah. I'm sorry. Obviously, if we had that answer, it would have been solved by now. But now you take the question of how do you produce food on Mars? And you look at it in this really confined, really narrow window, and you say, well, if we took this, and maybe if we modified the plant gene to do this, and you have the most brilliant people trying to make it so 5 lonely and brave astronauts are, 200 miles or 1 million miles away, or whatever, if they can survive on a planet because someone was smart enough to figure out how to really tweak the variables and make it survivable and able to grow food on Mars, what will that technology be able to do back here on Earth? And the research that comes out of that, sometimes you have to get really small to see a much bigger picture, No,
I think I said in the previous videos that the extreme and specific environments of space and space travel force you to be creative and come up with solutions that translate to all kinds of things that you don't even know about when you first come up with them. Mm-hmm. And I mean, like a lot of the water purification systems that they're using now in villages in Africa that are saving people's lives and preventing malaria and whatnot, I mean, came from the ISS. So
exactly.
The benefits are untold right now, but they are many.
And I think one of the big ones that'll probably eventually be figured out and put a better finger on, I think cancer research on the ISS, watching how genes mutate, watching how cells grow in extreme environments, just basically accelerates things that we have a hard time analyzing here on Earth. Yeah. But you get to see things change and grow, and people are studying that stuff daily for our benefit. Like, people don't understand. There's people right now trying to figure out how to literally cure cancer, literally do all these things that we just don't have a good grasp on. We sit there in big question marks and all these, variables. And when you start applying new scenarios to those scenes, you come up with more data. You understand your subject so much better. And that, to me, is literally like 95% of why space is vital to our
good
future.
Rant. I don't think anybody that listens to this podcast needs to be told that, but I think arming people with that knowledge to go out and, tell that office worker that says some dumb crap, is good to put out there.
I get a lot of those around electric cars, man.
Speaking of,
we should just do an episode of that. Yeah. Speaking of electric cars, woohoo! There's some major news. Let me share mi pantalla, my screen.
Show me the charts. Show me those sexy charts.
Yeah, are you guys seeing?
That's not a chart.
This is not a chart. So, Tesla. You guys seeing Tesla, for the first time in 2 years, and I really want to emphasize first time in 2 years, because people tend to think instead of in 2 years, it's never. Tesla posted a profit in Q3 of 2018. Not just a profit, a $312 million profit, a monster profit, considering in Q2 of 2018, they had a $700 million loss. So they went from negative 700 to positive 312 in 1 quarter, in 3 months. We'll get into some of the other numbers, and if you guys are watching along YouTube, I do have some data and charts for you. One thing that I just want to highlight here is a chart, and then we're looking at their update letter, if you guys can see this. The Tesla Model 3, this is the most mind-blowing thing. The Tesla Model 3, a single vehicle from Tesla, was the number one selling vehicle in the United States overall in terms of revenue. Right, the number of vehicles sold was the 5th most popular, but overall for revenue, it was like a cool $1 billion more brought in than the next car, which is the Toyota Camry. Wow. So in terms of numbers, in terms of volume of sales, the Toyota Camry, the Honda Civic, Honda Accord, Toyota Corolla are beating it. But in terms of revenue generated, the Tesla Model 3 generated over $3 billion in revenue.
So 50% more?
Yeah.
Than the next?
More like, something like that. Yeah.
It's 2 billion to 3 billion.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that is why you see this. That is why this happened. So if we take a look at some of the let me pull up another thing, because I built this dashboard to kind of highlight some of this data, because that's what I do with data. I pulled together the financial results for Tesla going back to 2010, Q1 of 2010. And yeah, it's insane. This was an absolute monster quarter. So net income of $312. It's $312 million. That's 143% increase from the previous quarter. Revenue of $6.8 billion. total. So that includes everything, which is a 70% jump from the previous quarter. And I have a little line graph here on YouTube if you guys are watching. So you can just see this skyrocketing. So it was 4 billion, just over 4 billion in Q2. Now it's at almost 7 billion. I think we're going to see this go up another, I don't know, 20, 30%, maybe even more in the final quarter of the year. That's because now production of the Model 3 is stable, as they said, meaning that they're averaging around 5,000 a week, and so that is just gonna again keep pushing these numbers up and up. Gross profit. So before you take away all the expenses and everything else, they're at 1.5 billion dollars in profit. That is another jump of 146%. So you just skyrocketing. Yeah.
Can you explain the difference between net income and gross profit? Those two seem similar to me.
Yeah. So, I mean, and net income is the term that accountants use or finance people use. You can think of it as like net profit, right? So gross profit is after let's say it cost you, let's say you sell a car for $1,000, and it took you $600 to make the car, the cost of goods sold. You subtract that, or you divide those two, and you have a 40% profit margin. That would be your gross profit. But then you have like SG&A, which you see on here as well, R&D, you have capital expenditures, you have interest payments on loans, and all these other, all the other parts
so even like payroll and all that stuff,
correct,
like paying everyone.
Yeah.
And
so net income is net income. Net income is like when it's all said and done, where are we at?
So that's the real number, really.
Yeah. That's like if me and you were bringing it to our bank accounts. This is like at the end of the month, like after all of our credit cards and everything else, and all of our bills are paid. What do we bring in versus how much is left? Whereas, like, because you can, in the idea there, the reason you look at this number is because gross profit is really important. Because if this isn't healthy, if this isn't a good number, then you're kind of screwed everywhere else. You need to have a high gross profit in order to then pay for everything else. Because if you're not making a good healthy profit on each model that you're selling, or each unit or service or whatever you're providing, then the rest of your expenses are just going to put you way into the red.
Can we need to make sure this link is in the description. People have to see this chart.
Yeah
You have to see it with your eyes in order to really go, whoa.
Right.
Numbers are cool and all, but seeing this with your eyeballs is like, oh man.
Now COGS, cost of goods sold, right? The cost it takes to make a thing, which does include employee wages that are working on that thing. So if you're not working on that, let's say you're in human resources or something, that you're not included in this number. This is like if you're on the factory floor kind of thing. That did go up. And so something you often look at is how cost of goods sold went up along with revenue. So you can see we had a 56% increase in cost of goods sold. There's more materials, there's more, people working, et cetera, but revenue went up by 70%. So revenue actually, exceeded the growth rate of the cost of making that revenue, which means that your margin on that is getting bigger as well.
And that just comes with volume.
Right. Yeah. That's scale, right? Because you get greater efficiencies. This is when you hear them say about being capital efficient, that's often what they're talking about is that essential difference there, the cost to generate revenue. Then you have SG&A. This is basically what you'd call overhead. Anything that's not related to the cost of selling something. And this went down by 3%, which is good because it was at an all-time high of $750 million in Q2. Now it's at just shy of $730 million.
Dumb question. What does SG&A stand for?
That is not a dumb question. It's sales. There is a thing. It's sales general expenditures or something like that.
Sales gross. Awful.
Yeah, so it's basically overhead. It's expenses related. I'm sorry, not related to selling. It's all the other stuff.
Okay.
And then you separate out R&D. So SG&A going down is good because it means you're becoming more efficient and you have more money. R&D going down. Also, I guess if you're just a pure financial person, is good because that means that you're making more money. But for me, as somebody that thinks this company needs to be investing and continuing to invest in R&D, I think this is maybe a negative. It went down by 9%, which is a pretty big drop. But it's one of those things where maybe every, you can see that there have been times where this kind of goes up and down. Who knows? Maybe they finished a project or whatever, something like that. But yeah, so R&D is also one that eats away at your net income. But it's one of those things where it's like, well, you need to be spending R&D, otherwise you're not innovating. And really, as Elon stated before, the way they win is not doing something like building out the supercharger network or whatever. It's more about the pace of innovation at the company.
Well, clearly not that they were necessarily outspending other people like by the dollar per quarter, but clearly Tesla has invested in R&D.
Yeah.
As their thing. So I think they can afford to like take a 10% back on that, because they're still going to be, riding that wave of the past 10 years of R&D compared to other companies. You know what I mean?
Their biggest asset, I feel, and strength, and why it's going to be insanely hard for people to try to compete with them, is the Gigafactory and their battery technology. All these other companies trying to make electric cars, that's where they're struggling the most, is making good batteries and at scale, because no one else can do it like Tesla does. And so that's it. I mean, that alone, and that is, a multi-billion-dollar investment that they've been making and working on for years. So I think your point is right. And I want to just highlight this chart here. This is your net income chart. And so Tesla, this is the third time they posted a quarterly profit. The big question there is, or I'm sorry, like the way I look at this is, when they first started out in 2010, they didn't really have anything tangible yet. They had the Roadster, the original Roadster, which was a very good proof of concept. It did a very good job in terms of convincing people that this was feasible and making it sexy and capturing the attention. But like the Model S didn't exist yet. Right, the Model S was not in production. That didn't happen until 2012. And so if you fast forward and you're looking at their net income, right, their profitability, you can see 2012 Q3, they're losing $111 million. Then they start to deliver the first Model S's. That income bumps up, the net income bumps up by 18% quarter over quarter. Then in 2013 Q1, they post their first quarterly profit, where it goes from negative 90 million to 11 million positive. And that's 112% growth quarter over quarter. Then guess what? What happens next? They introduce the Model X. And so now what they need to do is start building out those lines, ordering that equipment, hiring manufacturing. And so you see net income start to dip down, way down again, now to negative 320 million in Q4 2015. Coincidentally, in 2016 is when deliveries of the Model X start happen, way later than anticipated. And boom, after that, they go from a negative 293 million to positive 22 million, 107% jump quarter over quarter. Then what happens? Now they have the Model 3. If you guys remember, 2016, that's when we all put our deposits down and they started making those investments and building all that up. And you can say, oh, well, what about the deposits that were put down? How come that's not reflected here? Well, because the way accounting works is you can't actually count on that revenue on your books as like yours until you deliver the product or service that people paid money for, because you could still cancel. So you would see their accounts receivable jump up, but they wouldn't actually be able to recognize that revenue, is what you would say. So, but they still have to build out the Model 3 line, convert the two lines from 2 to 1 at Fremont, build out all the stuff at the Gigafactory to generate these battery packs. So they, plunge all the way down to a negative $718 million loss in Q2 of 2018, just a couple months ago, and then of course that's when they start delivering them at volume, and then that's where you see 143% jump in Q3. So this story is like history repeating itself, right? And so I would not be surprised if, and Elon said on the call, hey, we're going to be profitable from here on out. I'm not sure if that's actually going to happen, and if that's even the right thing to do. My guess is that maybe they'll have a quarter or two more of profit, but then guess what? We have the Model Y. So guess what? You got to build a new factory. You got the semi. You got all these things. You have to make huge investments. Again, I think we're going to see the net income drop, maybe to even larger levels than before. They start delivering Model Y at scale, and boom, it's going to be back up again. I mean, this is the pattern with them, right? Every time they have a new model car, this is kind of what happens. Now, the idea of why they could potentially remain profitable is because they are just so efficient with producing the Model 3, and the demand is so incredibly high that like they can spend to their heart's content, but they'll never actually dip into the red again. But we'll see. We'll see.
And just as far as the current vehicles they have, right now they have almost a money tree finally, where they have a line that can support the ability for them to, to produce the amount of cars that people want to buy.
That's,
you know what I mean?
That's right.
Like,
yep.
So without further investment on their current line, until there's no more demand, until people are not buying the Model S, not buying a Model X, not buying a Model 3 because they're like outdated, they currently can sit there and just generate money.
Yeah, so if they
have a money tree.
Right. So the reason why, so from now on, if they didn't do anything else, if they didn't build a new factory or start to grow or focus on growth, they could remain profitable until interest waned or whatever, right? But that's not what they do, and that's not what, as an investor or anyone else that's a fan of them, you want them to do, right?
Real quick, why I know it says like we're talking about, it said like it's the best car in revenue.
Yeah.
That's like mid-size car. What's that? Because it's not the best
overall,
even by revenue, probably. Mm-hmm. Isn't like the Ford F-150 or something still?
Sorry, car,
correct.
Yeah.
But like mid-size, any of the segments for
any passenger car. Yeah, not a truck or light
in the US. What is
or something like that?
Yeah, in the US, is it like, are cars like way down compared to SUVs and trucks right now?
In terms of revenue or volume
sales, even I don't have any idea.
Yeah, let me. I'm not quite sure. I do. So, Good Car, Bad Car is the website for this, and they usually best-selling vehicles in Canada. Come on, let's piss off. Let's piss off Canada real quick.
Yeah, let's add them to the list. That's okay. They're all enjoying their new recreation.
Oh, right.
So they aren't.
Okay. Top 30 best-selling vehicles in the United States. But it doesn't have numbers. Yeah, so the Ford F-Series is 75,000 units, Ram pickup, Silverado, RAV4. Yeah. Oh, then the Camry comes in at 27,000. I think so.
Wait, per year or per month?
Yeah, hold on. Let me bring it up on the screen here so you guys can see what I'm looking at. How do I share?
I'd be really curious.
Yeah, let me share the screen. So this is for September. So we're looking at Good Car, Bad Car, and we're looking at the top 30 vehicle sales in the United States for September specifically.
Month over month.
Yeah, so month over month. And so you can see the Ford F-Series is the number one by a long shot. Then the Ram pickup, the Chevy Silverado, the Toyota RAV4. That's shocking to me.
Small SUV.
Nissan Rogue, small SUV. Honda CR-V, so we're kind of in that crossover.
Weird.
This is the Model Y territory.
Mm-hmm.
Like all of these guys are just going to get eaten alive by the Model Y. And then the pickup, when Tesla comes out with that, all these guys on the top will get eaten alive.
I cannot believe there's that many pickups.
It's
a lot. And they're all empty, I promise you. There's nothing in the back.
That is, what is wrong with us? Go to Europe, you will see one pickup truck in 3 weeks.
Well, that's just because everything in the United States is laughably large. Have you seen a baby stroller in Europe versus the US? It's insane.
It's better known as a pram because it's basically just a piece of wood with four wheels as a skateboard. Yeah. Stick on it.
But see, look, so yeah, and I guess what we'd have to do here is
now
add up
all of Europe.
Yeah. We're on a roll.
But we're also applauding them for being efficient.
Yeah.
So
we'd have to take, I guess, the average price of these and apply that. But you should.
Well, this is the number I want to see because to produce 25,000 vehicles a month or 30,000, 25, that'd be like over 6,000 a week, right? And that's about what Tesla's producing right now. So they might eventually they might catch that Camry.
Yeah.
Oh, but
and Elon was saying that they're inching closer, and they think that without additional significant investment to the line at Fremont, that they should be able to get to about 8,000 per week Model 3s.
Model 3s.
Yeah.
Wow. So that'd be over 30,000 a month.
32,000 a month. Yep.
They might chip away and get close to that. Definitely into those.
Well, but
compact SUV.
again, if you look at the cost of a Model 3 compared to these other ones, they're going to be crushing them all. But the Ford F-Series may actually hold up in the Ram because those are pretty high dollar items. Yeah.
You know, looking at this, I can see why Elon says that he's more excited about the pickup, not just because they're popular, but they're not cheap either. People don't skimp on a Ford F-Series. They're expensive cars. And so he's probably looking at the kind of specs that they could get out of an electric pickup, and it's probably crushing what is already out there. And
Correct.
And it's for people who are willing to spend that kind of money on a vehicle. It probably is a good bet.
Oh, I think the pickup. I can't believe they almost didn't do that before the Model 3. Like I almost am surprised that wasn't their third one.
Yeah, I think it is an interesting question between that and the Model Y. But the Model Y, as you can see, like they're just working their way up here, right? So all these other cars, the Chevy Equinox, whatever that is,
that's a SUV, I think, isn't it?
So Toyota Camry, Honda Civic, Honda Accord, those guys are in terms of revenue already losing, right? And you can see the Model 3 is still like what is this? Maybe the top 15,
11th or something.
Yeah, top 12.
18,000% increase.
Yeah, that's kind of not fair because they sold 100 last year. Now they sold 22,000. But yeah, so I mean, just that's year over year. So at 6,000 a week, the Model 3 will inch up to 24,000. So you're in Honda Civic territory, but you're a 70% premium price over a Honda Civic, probably on average, somewhere around there. So you're going to be crushing it. Absolutely. The Model Y is also going to crush it. And then, the pickup, like I was thinking about this. So if you are in the transportation space, whatever you make, whatever it is, if you are transporting people or goods or whatever, if you today, as of right now, are not already working on something to compete with Tesla, whether or not they've even announced plans to get into your space, if you are not already working on that, you are behind.
You're too late.
You may have a shot. But you should start working on a contract with Tesla to buy batteries from them for whatever the thing is that you make, because guaranteed they're coming. And when they get there, as they've now proven, the luxury sedan space with the Model S, best-selling sedan in the world, in the luxury space. The SUV is the Model X is one of the top ones, safest ever, those kind of things. The Model 3 with the passenger cars, I mean, it's just they just destroy everything that they tackle. And so these other guys, it takes years to come up with this stuff. It's not something you can just do overnight.
I want to say why I think back to the pickup thing, and why pickup truck manufacturers need to be terrified.
Yeah.
Okay, if you actually look at the reason people buy pickup trucks, right? Anyone, we're not talking even contract, not even people that use a pickup truck like they're supposed to, but the people that normally buy a pickup truck, they don't really care necessarily about gas mileage. They care about having a big, bad truck, and they want it to be kind of, what's the word? Not flamboyant, but obnoxious,
kind of like specced out.
Yeah, like they want it to be a big, cool thing, And what's cooler than a pickup that can destroy and tow anything? Even if people aren't going to tow anything ever, they still want the Ford F-250 because it can tow X amount or whatever. They want that bragging right. And what's going to happen when all of a sudden you have a vehicle with 1,000 pound-feet of torque and 700 horsepower that could literally tow 10 boats per second? It's going to just absolutely... How many boats per second?
So many boats per second.
It's going to destroy a gasoline or a diesel truck in actual towing capacity. The problem that will scare people right now will definitely be range when towing, because people go, well, we take our boat down to the lake, 5 times a year, and it's a 600-mile trip. 1,000-kilometer trip. How can we do that in an electric truck? That's not going to be possible. I think that's going to be the big thing, is being like, well, look, actually, we have, even when towing, you still have a 400-mile range. You top off once on your way there, just like you would with a gas station, and you'll get to your lake no problem. Once you're there, You can inflate your stuff using the built-in battery. You could run power tools off of our built-in inverter. You can do X, Y, and Z. No
I think the
problem.
range on it is going to be insane because it's going to be such a bigger vehicle.
Yeah.
They can
So-
put a lot more batteries in there.
Yeah.
We do have some sort of tweet details about this. The truck will have a 400 to 500 mile range, maybe higher. Dual motor all-wheel drive, dynamic suspension. So if your truck is parked at an angle, you'll be able to push a button and have it become level. So you can load.
Or if you're towing, it'll
Right.
know.
240
wait on
volt
the-
connection for heavy duty tools, air compressor, etc. 300,000 pounds of towing capacity. And I would call BS on that, except for the Model X has already towed a Boeing or an Airbus A380.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I can't imagine that this, I can now totally picture this being possible.
Well, and the only limitation there for the Model X has nothing to do with power. I guarantee its chassis is not designed to handle that much
Right.
force through the drivetrain. But the actual motors, motors are crazy perfect for this
Yep.
situation.
It will be able to float. Okay. It will have lockers. I don't know if what he means by this when it says lockers is bead lockers, like on your tires, or like some kind of like locker to put stuff in. I don't know.
I'll bet like a tool locker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So it's funny.
It'll have
He says
missiles and oil slick.
tax.
Exactly. But with that, it's funny because I have a compact truck. That's the only gas car I have. Is the one I had before I bought my Tesla, and I love it because it's small. And people ask me like, would you buy the Tesla truck? Like, no, it's not. It's going to be a monster F-150 competitor. It's not going to be like a cute little, hey, that's a
Like a
cute
Ford
little
Ranger.
electric truck. Yeah, it's not going to be a Ford Ranger or whatever.
Or an El Camino.
Yeah, no, I would.
Why aren't those popular in the United States?
I think they're pretty
People,
cool.
if you want a truck for a truck, why not have a small car with a bed in it? Like they do. I was in New Zealand 2 weeks ago. I saw those all over the place. Utes are super popular. They don't really do big pickup trucks.
Can I tell a quick story? So
Yes,
it's
Story time.
I grew up in a really small town here in Texas, and when you grow up around something, you just accept it. You don't question it. It's not that and a big pickup truck that was a status symbol. Nobody. Well, out there were some farmers, and they did actually use it for what it's meant to be used for. But for the most part, like the person that got the most attention in town, I remember he was like his dad owned an insurance company or something, so they did pretty well. And he had this big quad cab dually thing, and it was just like the status symbol. Well, when I went to college, I made friends with a guy from England, and I just remember one time he just was like, "Why are there all these trucks with nothing in it?" And because over there, that's like a utility vehicle. That'd be like driving around in a pitchfork or something,
Yeah.
Wait, pitchfork? No, forklift. That's what
Forklift.
driving a pitchfork would be weird. But he was just like so confused. He's like, why are people driving pickups and there's nothing in it? And it was just like that one question that just totally reframed everything for me. And I was like, yeah, this is really dumb. And ever since then, like I used to work in this office building, and there was this guy that drove this gigantic, like he took up 4 parking spaces truck, and the only thing he carried in it was his briefcase. And I was like, what are you doing? Why?
Well, it's like in Europe, they have those little cargo vans, where little, like small vans that have like, no windows in the back for cargo. No one would drive that recreationally.
Right.
It's literally just to be able to throw, stuff in, have a safe place to put it. Yet we drive recreationally, work pickup. Yeah, you're right. It's
As a daily commuter vehicle. And it gets like 5 miles a gallon. It's just insane.
It's like the most it's not, I don't even get it because like lots of these people have families, so they get the quad cab, extended cab, thing. It's like this is still like less amount of interior volume than a Accord or whatever,
And a Model S.
like, and less like sealed volume. So if you have to put something, say you want something in your trunk, you're on vacation going somewhere. Well, now I got to put a lid on the bed, and that's even more pointless now.
Right
so
through the storm.
For me, the thing I use it for, and this is like, in my truck when I do drive it, which isn't that often anymore, is I throw my surfboards in the back. So for me, I guess like that's the only time where it's like, okay, yeah. And it being outside, not being enclosed is fine. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It is a funny thing. I did wonder if Tesla was going to announce a service van, like a service vehicle, like the delivery ones for Amazon packages and stuff like that, because they sell a tremendous amount and they're businesses buying them. So there's like an inherent demand. So if you could produce one that was just better money wise, yeah, it'd be great. And there are some, I think Mercedes actually has a brand that does something like this, but it's kind of like 100-mile range. It's not great. So anyways, I thought that they would announce that at the semi-truck unveil, but alas, that they didn't. So
yeah, that shocked. I thought they'd do or even like, can you imagine replacing all of the mail trucks?
yeah, no, that whole line. Yeah.
That there's literally millions of those things around the United States, and they're an aging fleet with tons of maintenance, terrible gas mileage. Like all you'd have to do is make a really simple like go-kart version, basically. That would be amazing.
Going back to Joe's story of status symbols, I got an email from Tesla last night saying, "Hey, go ahead and wire us $250,000." To complete your Roadster payment. And then I got an email quickly after saying, hey, ignore that email. Sorry. But what happened was folks like myself and others that have earned free Roadsters through their referral program, they were added to our Tesla accounts. And so now when I log in, there's actually a Roadster there in addition to the other cars on my account.
So in other words, we pissed off Norway, we pissed off Florida, Alabama, Canada. Now this is just the way to make sure you make absolutely everyone that's listening to this hate you.
Well, I feel like I've done a really good job at this, for a while now. It's like one of my skills being online is getting people to hate me. So, but I just wanted to point out. So the reason why this is even relevant to anyone else other than me to like show off is that this is maybe a hint that the Roadster discount in the referral program may be coming to an end. Some friends of mine were talking like, why would they be doing this now? Why this change at this point in time? And I did reach out to the referral people because I asked, hey, does a regular Tesla Model 3 referral on the referral program count towards the Roadster discount? And they said yes. And I was thinking, so if a Roadster discount is worth $5,000, 2% off a $250,000 car, and the margin at 18% on a $40,000 car isn't a whole lot greater than that $5,000. This can't last. You can't continue to do this. Give away 5,000
Roadster that they make.
Yeah, and these are the Founders Series. They said they're only making 1,000 of them, and they're probably giving away 50 to 100 of them now. Wow. Absolutely nuts. Wow. So I wanted to bring that up just to, show off a little bit, but I also wanted to just mention that I think it has a relevance with the referral program. So anyone out there that's going for that, now would be the time to make that push.
In fairness, if I pulled up my little Tesla account and saw a Roadster sitting there, I would freak the hell out too. So.
Yeah. Last night I was like, oh my God. And then if anyone's, wondering about the second Roadster, I did contact them. They said, yeah, we'll be adding that to soon as well.
Oh yeah. Because just in case anyone's wondering, Ben, I'm really excited that you got your one $250,000 car, but what about your other one, Ben?
Well, that's such a human thing. You see the one Roadster, you're like, where's the other one?
Yeah, exactly.
Only one?
Yeah.
This guy.
Well,
does he even test?
Well, and the reason I mentioned that, yes, because that's the first reaction I had, but people also were people on my Twitter and YouTube were saying, oh, well, yeah, you got enough referrals for a second one, but Tesla's not going to give it to you. And I'm like, no, I confirmed it with them yet again. And, they're adding it. So if there were any doubts about any of that stuff.
Of course. Hey, by the way, while we're talking about Tesla, obviously, this is clearly, so every week when we record, we talk about Tesla. And then every week, as soon as we're about ready to hit post, some big thing happens. Mm-hmm. So I wonder what it's going to be this week. Like, clearly something's going to happen. Although Thursday, last night, he tweeted a ton. I think he tweets a lot on Thursday.
Yes. Yeah, people have done analysis on this. Thursday night.
That's funny because we normally post on Thursday. We're recording on Friday. So now we have all the tweety goodness already in our brains.
Yeah. Speaking of this phenomenon, last week, right after we posted, they announced the mid-range Model 3, which we haven't even talked about today because there's been so much more news. So, yeah, somebody tell me about that.
Well, I kind of want to hear you talk about it because it's interesting. My speculation is that they're making it so they don't really have to change anything on their manufacturing other than, okay, don't put some of these cells in, and they can sell a cheaper car with almost the same, with probably more profitability potentially or similar, and lower the price point to attract some of those buyers that were kind of waiting for a cheaper one. What do you think? What's your?
I think that I don't know if they're going to make more profit per model. Are you guys seeing my screen right now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I heard that the battery production was still a little bit of a bottleneck, so they were able to do these with less batteries and get the price down for those who wanted to pay a little bit less.
Yeah, I heard that as well. Well, I didn't hear the bottleneck part. I heard that that these packs do have fewer batteries, so they could produce more cars with it, or more battery packs and more powertrains. So the volume would be increased. I don't think they're going to be making a higher margin on this one necessarily. Maybe a slightly higher margin. But there is something even additional crazy about this, is that they raised the price. So if you guys recall, it was 40. It was 45,000, and then it jumped up to 46,000. So who even knows what's going on with the pricing here? But so
show us that. Your screen's frozen, right? Or I'm only seeing Model S right now.
Okay.
Is it
resume share? How about that? Now you guys seeing the Model 3 screen?
Go.
Okay,
Yep.
good.
Yep.
So and if people just a recap, if you guys aren't super nerds like all of us following this stuff, the Model 3 previously was 310 miles. And it started at $49,000 essentially because you had to buy the premium package as well. Now they have the mid-range one with 260 miles instead of 310. That is cheaper. It starts at 46,000, but that also includes the premium interior. So it's essentially a $41,000 price point. Oh, and you can add this. You couldn't add the white interior initially either.
For only 1,000 too.
Yeah, how much was it before? 1,500.
I think it was 2,500 when I.
They also changed some of these the price here. So for whatever reason, the red now is $2,500. I mean, originally it was 1,000, and now it's 2,500.
I thought that went up a little while back.
Well, it went up several times. So originally the red was $1,000, and then the red and the white went up to 1,500, and then they both went up to 2,000, and then now the red is at 2,500. So
is it literally just them saying, like, looking at it as like, oh, there's still a lot of demand for this, we can raise the price?
I don't know, like why raise the price? It's funny because in the digital space, this is a sales tactic that people use often in order to incent people to buy. It's, hey, the price is going up if you don't buy now. In 7 days it'll go up, and you go, well, why would it go up? It's like, well, it forces people to buy. It's a trigger. It's scarcity. It's this common sales psychology type stuff. So the problem here is that they never tell you that. So if that was the reasoning, so people are arguing or being mad at Tesla, like, oh, you just keep doing this to make us buy. It's like, yeah, but if they really wanted to be effective at that, they would tell you the price is going up, because then it would encourage you to buy soon. So there's a new mid-range version out there. If you price it out with, all the basic options, adding an autopilot, you're at 51,000 versus 59,000 or 55,000 would be the long-range version of this car.
And they got rid of the ability to add full self-driving.
Correct. You can no longer, from the start, purchase full self-driving, but you can do that after the fact. So you can call in once you place your order. You also can still get the long-range one. You just have to call in after the fact. So you can go place this order right now, and then you can call them and say, look, I want the long-range version and I want full self-driving. I would not recommend the full self-driving. That's my personal take, because I think it's too far out. But the long range I would definitely recommend, because it's the best price per mile that you get.
But it also depends on your needs, though. I mean, if you literally only need 200 miles ever, or even 150 miles, 220 miles or 260 is going to be overkill for some people's
Yeah,
applications.
I understand the line of thinking. I just, as someone that's been an electric car owner for a few years, I would always recommend getting the longest range possible, even if you don't think you're going to need it, because when you do, you're really going to need it, and you're going to really, really want
Yeah.
it. And plus, the longer you have your car, I think the better, like with battery degradation and stuff like that, it'll just be a better situation.
Yeah.
So I personally always recommend the longest range you can possibly get. But so to me, the reasoning behind not getting it would be that monthly price point, because let me see if it even shows you here. Yeah, so at this configuration we just looked at here, you're looking at a $735 a month car payment. It's kind of a lot, right? For a lot of people, that's a lot of money to pay for a car. So especially if your previous car was like a Honda Civic or something like that. So I think honestly, like if you can't afford the longer range, go with the shorter range. If you can't afford the longer range and don't think you'll need it, I don't care. Still get it. That's my thinking. So as to why they did that, I think it's to increase the volume that is out there, getting more cars in people's hands, because the tax credit is running out at the end of this year. Or I'm sorry, the phase out is beginning at the end of this year, barring any legislation that is currently being proposed passing. So there's a lot of things happening, but my guess is that the $7,500 tax credit, a lot of people are going to be able to afford this mid-range model, and so maybe they're trying to do that to get more people in Teslas sooner. That's my guess.
What gets me is that my car, I've had it for just over a month and it's already obsolete.
How is it obsolete?
Or not obsolete, but they don't offer it anymore. I got the long range single motor, and now they only offer the dual motor, all-wheel
Limited
drive,
edition,
the
man.
long range version. Yeah, it's limited.
Yeah, is that
it's a collector's item.
But really, is that a bad thing?
I don't know that it's a bad thing. It's just kind of funny. I was like, I've only had it a month and they already don't offer it anymore.
Would you have ordered the mid-range had it been an option? So there you go. I mean, you got what you wanted.
No, I got what I wanted. I'm not upset. I just think it's funny.
Yeah, it is an unusual feeling.
And the funny thing is, and I was saying this to somebody the other day, I mean, it's the price of my Model 3 is literally more than every car that I have bought previously combined.
Yeah. That's most people. That's most people.
Yeah.
And the thing is, though, it's really the cheapest option that I had available for my particular situation, living in Texas, having family that's, 6-hour drive away. I'm not going to get there in a Nissan Leaf,
Right.
I mean, there are charging options, but they don't have the supercharger network, and they don't have quite the range that this one had. I had to get something that was at least 300-mile range. So that's kind of the way I have to frame it to people. It's like, that's really the only option available, because I couldn't afford, a P100D or something that could get 300 miles. This was the best option I had, and I'm happy with it. It's great. I'm not complaining. It's just, it is what it is.
Yeah. The 100D would be your best bet. If you guys are seeing my screen here, it's 335 miles. The P100D is actually a little bit less, because the performance motor isn't as efficient. It's designed for speed. So along those lines, there's also Elon tweeted about some of these options for the Model S and X are going away on November 1st. So not all, and it's again to streamline production. So they're going to remove some of these other choices here in terms of the different interiors, etc. So that's also something to be cognizant of, is that essentially, like, there's never like, you can't wait for the optimal time to buy. It's like as soon as you possibly can is always the right answer to buy in terms of Teslas and stuff.
Yeah, you don't want to like bet. It's not like the stock market where you place a bet and hope you're right. It's like, if it's available now, do it, and you can make it happen. Do it, because
maybe that's
whatever you're planning on buying might not be available in a week.
Yeah, but they don't advertise that. That's just how it's like, how it goes.
Yeah.
So there's also the inventory page where you can buy some of the used ones, or the new inventory ones, and I think these are actually generally good buys. So.
Are they quite a bit cheaper normally?
A little bit. So here's a 100D. I wish it told you. It's 2018 Model S 100D, 102,000. That's not too much off. Yeah, I think maybe it's 110 normally or something like that. So yeah, it's
Yeah, there's no way I could.
yeah. So there, I mean, and
That's
so
crazy.
there's that. And on the earnings call, which happened, there's so much other stuff to talk about. I don't know if we have time or really want to get into it now. One thing that on the point we were just talking about with regards to when to buy in the full self-driving, people are concerned about the upgrade to because there is a new chip that you need that does the processing of that neural network of the AI that actually does the full self-driving. And that will be free for you if you purchase the full self-driving. Now, they stated that in early 2019, those new chips should be shipping with the cars being built at that point. But if you were to buy it now, that it takes about a 30-minute upgrade in your car. So it just pops in. So you don't have to actually wait to buy that to get the new chip. If you buy now, you can just, and you buy the full self-driving option. Again, personally, I don't recommend that. But if you did do that, you could, they would just do the upgrade for free. Otherwise, you have to pay an added cost, which we don't know how much that is yet.
Yeah, we've talked about this. I did purchase the full self-driving, just mostly because if you did it at the time, it'd be 3,000, and if I waited, it'd be 5,000. And if it happens within a year,
now it's 6,000.
And now it's 6,000. So it's quite frankly, as long as it happens within 3 years, and I get a chip and I get this full self-driving on something that I would have liked to purchase half off, isn't too bad.
Well, and should they get the Tesla network going, which he talked about quite a bit on the earnings call as well, I think that would pay for itself.
Yeah, it easily could. I don't know if I'd do that, but
well, and they'll have their own, which I thought was super interesting. Is that they'll have their own cars, their own fleet of cars for the Tesla network, the Uber self-driving Uber. Yeah, and he said millions is what he said of cars. So and
I doubt it.
They haven't even made 1 million cars to date, so that's like way down the road. I think what he's talking about, but yeah, and actually, I don't see it happening within 10 years. I don't see a true level 4 autonomy happening within 10 years. I really don't. I think we'll have, like, maybe Tim, with purchasing the full self-driving, you'll get the upgraded chip and you'll start to see maybe some features, features. that other people that don't have that feature, that didn't purchase that, don't get. But I think true level 4 autonomy, I don't think we'll see until, much further down the road.
Right.
That's my guess anyways.
Yeah.
Well,
Cool.
real quick before we wrap this up, because we have been talking a while, I wanted to just, I'll take like 30 seconds to do this, because I'm Mr. Media guy. After this earnings call, historic record profits and everything, I'm checking all the headlines and stuff, and still the Fudsters are making the headlines as negative as they possibly can. Here's one from Financial Review. Tesla's profit undoes much of Elon Musk's damage to stock. Jalopnik, of course. Tesla reports $312 million profit while still fixing Model 3 delivery issues. So they had to get the Model 3 delivery issues in there. Engadget, Tesla turns a profit in Q3 despite Musk. And I could go on and on. There was one from Bloomberg that you shared earlier, Ben. I mean, it's just... I keep thinking there's going to be some pivotal moment where it's just going to shut all that down. They're going to just stop doing it, but they're not. No matter how good the news is, no matter how much they dominate, these guys are still going to find some way to make it negative or focus on something that doesn't matter.
Until all the people listening to their advice lose all their money and stop trusting them eventually, to be like, oh, wait, you guys were clearly not having my best interest because you were slanting this in a certain way.
Well, there were two major shorts that turned around just in the days before the financial report. So clearly they knew that there was something coming.
There were two? I just knew the one.
Yeah, there were two. I can't remember the other guy's name, so I probably shouldn't have said that. But I did see there were a couple of them.
The one was pretty big, though, for him to change his mind publicly.
You know what, though? Related to that, I did that video talking about the Model 3 sales. And I did that tweet and all that stuff, showing just the volume and just how crazy skyrocketing it is. And a buddy of mine who is not, he is pretty agnostic when it comes to Tesla. He's like not for it or against it. He bought like $60,000 worth of stock And I was like, look, if it goes south, don't blame me. But then it jumped up by what, like 20-30% or something. And then he sold it, So it's one of those things like when you look at the data and you see, oh, these guys have the best selling car in the United States. Are they going to do okay? Yeah, that's a good indicator, right?
I finally got one of my best friends is a huge car guy, but he lives a few hours away from me. So I really haven't had a chance to get him in the Model 3. He's never been in a Tesla. Huge, like when I say car guy, he's someone that's owned literally a dozen of the same cars because he loves wrenching on them. Those old like DSMs, like Eclipse, like a Turbo Eclipse, Turbo, all those like old 90s Mitsubishi Eclipses and whatever. There's like 3 of them that were the same car. And he has wrenched on a million of them. Now he has like a Z3 that he put a V8 in, like an LS1 from a Corvette in his BMW Z3. Like he's a huge motorhead, and he's always been like, he's not against Tesla either. He's not like I don't like this coming, but he's definitely never like really, I don't think ever considered it as a driving option at all. I got him in the Performance Model 3, and he just had a blast. He couldn't believe it. He is just like, this is so like he loved like the autopilot and stuff, the stuff that I didn't think he would care so much about. I thought he would only care about how fast it is, but all of a sudden he's sitting there going like, oh my, this is amazing. Hands off the wheel. Like, I can't believe this. It starts to click. It's not until you really drive one that you actually appreciate what it is and how it's such a massive leap forward compared to anything else on the road.
Yeah, that's it, man. It's undeniable. You literally cannot ride in a Tesla, have never been in one, only been in regular cars your life, and not be just blown away by it.
Yeah. No, like some of the videos that I was watching, and this is a fair thing to suggest or think about, was like, is the interest still there? Like, yes, they had this massive quarter. Is this going to continue? Are they going to continue to see these kinds of results and stuff? And I started looking at it and I was like, okay, so they had total, I think it was 455,000 reservations. And Elon said on the call that they were losing about 20%, like 20% of them were canceling. So that's 1/5. They've already sold 100,000. They just said 100,000 mark last month or whatever. So we're still looking at around 250, 300 back of the envelope calculation there of people who, many of whom have probably never even seen the car still, especially over in Europe, have never sat in it, who are still just sitting there waiting to get their cars. And then there's that effect. There's that effect of people who actually get in it and are like, holy crap, what is going on here? And so the more of them that are out there, the more people that are going to want them, the more people see them and drive them and ride in them. I think we're just seeing the beginning of this. I think the interest in it is at the lowest it's ever going to be. Yeah, it's actually going to keep building up from there.
It's an iPhone, man. Yeah. It is the iPhone moment where prior to that, you had a regular flip phone, and then you see that and you're just like, whoa, oh my God, this is incredible. I have to have one, right? And it's the same kind of phenomena where literally no one else is making something even close to it,
Well, I think I shared this on the show once that I had a friend that was so anti the actual iPhone. Like when it came out, he's like, that is the dumbest thing. I never want one.
I need a real keyboard.
And literally like, real keyboard, all these things. My flip phone's fine, and literally 2 years later, he's using a smartphone. It's Android, so it's not. But it's like, were you against? What were you against? Because you weren't against, obviously, like a touch screen and having applications on your phone and all the things that this phone brings to you. Because now you're using it 2 years later. I think that's the same thing here, where people are like, they might be against the scary change that. I now have an electric car and it is smart and does all these things. I don't want it to do that. I want to just drive it and fix it myself and send it to my mechanic if it breaks, Like, it's a scary change. I get that. But guaranteed in 5 years, when you're buying a new car, you're not going to want the car that does nothing for you. Like, you're going to want the car that does everything for you because it's great. And that's actually when my friend was driving with me. We're on the interstate for just a minute, even like 3 miles, and we're watching someone just swerve around in the lanes. And I'm just going, I just can't wait until everyone has self-driving cars. And he's like, you're exactly right. Like, I commute every day and I just watch people swerving through the lanes. And it's just going to, once people realize like, oh wait, a car can actually stay in this lane a lot better than a person can.
Well, it's almost like
We're all
It's
gonna
almost
choke
like
in it.
flying, on commercial airlines. The majority of the time it's in autopilot. Literally, because the
Yeah.
plane is better at keeping a smooth, comfortable ride than the human pilot is. The human pilot's just there for
Mhm.
kind of takeoff and landing. And even that, there is like an auto land feature. So
Of
it's one of those
course.
things
Yeah.
where you're just like, yeah, this is the way it's going. And until you get into a car, and if you've never been in one, until you get in there, you don't actually know what that feels like. So
Yeah. When it comes to technology, I'm always like, never say you're never going to do something, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah.
the same thing with the phone, with the car. To take it forward, you talk about brain computer interfaces like Neuralink and stuff like that. I did a video on that, and like half the comments were like, I would never do that. And it's like, no, you probably will.
yeah,
When everybody else is doing it,
and it's
and
incredible.
you get some taste of it somewhere along the way, and you see what they can do that you can't, you're gonna do it.
I saw Casey Neistat had a video where somebody he was working with or whatever got one of those implanted, a little implant in her hand, and then she could like unlock doors and unlock her phone with her hand because it had a RFID in it. Yeah. Yeah. So that's I'm sorry to
it's
hear.
not like brain surgery, of course, that nobody's going to want to sign up for that. But once they make it to where it's non-invasive or whatever, yeah, I mean, you're going to do it.
Of course you are. All
That's
in
crazy.
time.
I love it.
Yep.
Let's talk about what you guys are working on this week.
I'm going to guitar class. I don't know about you guys.
Cool.
Where's that video?
It's out there. It's out there. It is. Me playing flamenco.
Ben's
How many
guitar
years have I
class.
said by the end of the year I'm going to know how to play guitar? It's never happened.
You need Simone Yetch's like her star calendar
Yes.
thing she made. I don't know.
Yeah,
if you know
Simone
what that is,
Gersh.
but it's actually pronounced
Yetch?
Yetch. But it looks
Yeah.
like
Sorry. I'm pronouncing it with
Yerch or
the
something.
Americans. So now we're
Yerch.
pissed off Sweden. Yes. Another one to the list.
But yeah, she's got this thing that came out on Kickstarter, and within 1 hour went from 35,000 was her minimum, 150,000 in 2 hours of whatever it's called. It's crazy. But basically all it is you light up a star every day. You do something. It's just this pretty thing to put on a wall.
That reminds me of that XKCD where it was like, or no, who is it that pushes the rock up the hill for eternity?
Sisyphus?
Sisyphus, yeah. It was a comic that was like Sisyphus, pushing the rock. It was like, you shall be banished here to push this rock and only for it to go back down. And then it was like, God or whomever coming back. Okay, fine. We'll add a counter. So every time you push it up, it'll increment by 1. And he's like, woohoo, it's just like he's going, pushing it. That's essentially what it is, It's,
Joe, what's your video for next week since Ben's just going to be
what is my video for next week? It's about it's about free will. It's more of an esoteric sort of philosophical kind of thing, but it talks about the split brain experiments where they cut the corpus callosum to divide the two hemispheres of people's brains to keep them from having seizures and all the weird side effects that came of it. Like literally their hands would be fighting each other because they had two different brains doing things. Yeah, it's crazy stuff. But I tie that into
I can't wait.
Who's really making your decisions. It's actually some subconscious module that gets interpreted to your conscious brain by another part of your brain. It's crazy stuff.
I just heard a thing about that. There are folks that argue we do not actually have free will, in that it's like predetermined essentially. So in the argument was that they measured brainwave activity prior to conscious awareness of that. So you could see that there was like a brain signal that happened prior to your awareness of that thing.
Yeah.
Meaning that.
Right. So basically your brain's going to make that decision.
Right.
100 times out of 100.
You may think your willpower is strong enough to not eat the chocolate while your wife is traveling, but guaranteed of it, you've already made the decision. It's like the Matrix, right? Like you there is no choice. You've already made the choice. You just need to understand why you made the choice.
Depends on how you frame it. Is it you that's making that decision or something else inside your own brain that's making the decision? And then you justify that decision by saying, well, I haven't had chocolate in 2 hours. So,
That's right. It's the simulation that we're living in.
I've been working on a video for almost 2 months. And every time I get to scripting it, like I'll literally get like a sentence or two. It's without a doubt as I'm scripting this is when I'll get like an email of like, hey, do you want to go to New Zealand? Hey, do you want to go to Alabama? Like, I have never finished this video because it's like, I don't know. It's what's that word? It's like cursed to never get finished.
I don't know. Can you give
so that's
me
what
that
I'm
script?
hoping to work.
I want to do those things.
Well,
I'm gonna put you on a travel ban here. Hold on a second. Let me.
So hopefully I'll be working. This one is one that I've been working for a long time, and it's going to be the most painfully close to complete canceled space programs.
Oh.
So programs that like literally had hardware built, are going to be doing this and then get canceled, get canned, like in the works, pretty far along in the works. Like I'm trying to make it like really close to, oh, you're flying next year type of thing or whatever. There's some really sad canceled programs that I really wish had existed or, made it through. So it'll be a really interesting video. And hopefully I actually get the script done here ASAP.
I do have a video that I just remembered I'm supposed to do. This is like yours. This is the like all the new EVs coming out in 2019 and kind of what I think of them.
Yeah,
it's actually
that'd be a great one. I would love that.
It'd be a short video.
Well,
but
yeah. Well, I mean, I want to see when people do those reviews. I love when they make a list of like, here's all this, but then at the end, like line them all up and actually show the price, the range, the dollar per range meter and things like that, like put all that.
Yeah. So
I love that.
I've got all the research. I just need to put it together. Like the earnings call for Tesla was supposed to be next week. That's usually when it would be. So I had basically planned on doing that video this week and then doing the earnings call stuff next week. But because they moved it up, it was like my whole world got turned upside down. So anyways, that's what I'm working on. So stay tuned because I think that'll be every year I'm going to do that. Like, oh, hey, here are the new EVs coming out next year. And then I want to compare them to like the top selling EVs currently out there and just show, hey, like here's this new one coming out. Is it worth buying, right? Is it worth considering? Like, why would you or why wouldn't you? And you just compare it to the other ones. So a big reason for some of these would be availability, right? Like if you're in Australia and you need a right-hand drive Model 3, well, they don't. Yeah. So yeah, this other one's a better option because it's just actually available and this one isn't. So all of that in time.
Well, we did it again. What is this, number 7?
Yeah, number 7. I forgot to say that at the beginning. Lucky 7.
Cool, guys.
Well, should we wrap it up here?
Yeah, my dogs are getting antsy.
Yeah. Be sure and, if you're on iTunes or whatever, leave us a review, tell your friends, all that stuff. If you're on YouTube, we always love a subscription and a like, all that stuff too. And go ahead and enjoy the Everyday Astronaut song on the way out.
Until then, we will see
you guys next week.
see you in our ludicrous future.
Bye.